Hey everybody, this is Rydo and we're back to Pinball Arcade. So last time we did Pistol Poker, which was the last Alvin G and Company table, which that's a weird curation because it basically means that for Pinball Arcade they got Party Zone and Pistol Poker and maybe really nothing else that actually were made by Alvin G. Honestly, I don't even know if Party Zone was made by Alvin G. I don't think it was. I think uh, the World Tour was made by Alvin G. Which I suppose that kind of highlights the compounding problem of trying to emulate and license old tables. Um, if there were enough of an established court case for fair use that you could potentially take old tables and claim that the table design and concepts that couldn't be copyrighted and that they had fallen into the public domain, it would be one thing certainly. But because Disney has pushed back the idea of anything going into the public domain for 70 years plus the after the death of the original creator, which I believe is what it's at now in the United States, they have to negotiate licenses. So why would you negotiate licenses with a company that literally made one really good table, but then they're going to make you spend 2 years in negotiations with lawyers to get the license to that one table that would barely sell anyways because it's not in the top three of game table developers anyways. Uh, I really don't believe Pinball Arcade has missed a company here. As far as the 90s and 70s and 80s, there's a lot of opportunity that older tables were made by a much wider variety of developers, but older wooden tables are also not very memorable for me, at least, because I wasn't really alive when wooden tables existed, and wooden tables also got burnt quite a bit during a Prohibition era event. So yeah, the curation of the games here seems like it's the right number. The only thing I could say is that FarSight Studios themselves making one table is kind of a go nowhere action. Like they would have had to make a lot more tables. And when we get into the 2000 eras, which includes the 2010s eras, and I assume even now the 2020 eras, uh, they are not going and seeking the small table designers out there like Jersey Jacks or any real new license at all. In fact, I know for a fact that Stern just made an Avengers pinball table relatively recently, and they've got a Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles table relatively recently. Those would be tables that would make a lot of sense to have been added, but Pinball Arcade seems to have pretty much stopped. Well, that's enough backstory. Let's jump into Star Trek The Next Generation, 1993. One of the best tables,
Make it
I
so.
think, ever. One of the things about it certainly is that you're going to have the voice actor lines of the ensemble cast of The Next Generation. Weirdly, we don't have a table based around the original series. As far as I can remember, I don't think I ever saw an original series table, which would have made sense for there to have been one made at some point. There's a lot of opportunity here to talk about The Next Generation as a TV series that I'll try and avoid getting too into the weeds with. There is also opportunity to talk about how in 2021 there is the Picard series, which is supposed to be a continuation of Jean-Luc Picard's story, and season two, as of this recording, was just kind of hinted and teased at, and they're going to bring back Q, which seems weird. It seems weird to have had the Picard series in the first place, um, and season one didn't seem like it was very well done or well received. So it probably is best just to consider the Picard series non-canon. It's probably best to consider everything after the Next Generation non-canon, including the TV reboots of Star Trek, the movie reboots of Star Trek. Uh, because even though Deep Space Nine is an interesting show, it is, in my opinion, more interesting a show as a separate sci-fi series not in the Star Trek universe than it is a continuation of the original series or the Next Generation. But in all fairness, the original series and the Next Generation also don't really connect. So uh, every generation of Star Trek has been its own standalone uh, sci-fi series set in a sort of similar universe uh, with varying levels of success. Star Trek The Next Generation 1993 is another incredible design from Steve Ritchie based on the hit television series. It wasn't doing great in the first season, quality-wise or rating-wise, but eventually it pulled through and uh, went, I believe, 5 seasons. It puts the player in the role of an honorary Starfleet officer serving next to their favorite characters from the show. They don't name the character you're playing as, but that's fine. In all actuality, you really don't know who you're playing as in almost every pinball table. Features include 8 different USS Enterprise missions. So this table in particular has quite a lot of modes. And it makes those modes very apparent, whereas some other tables have had modes, but you kind of wouldn't even really know that they were modes in the first place, other than the fact that if you were paying attention, they were lighting up something on the playfield. You, in this table, particularly want to do all 8 missions and succeed in all 8 missions to get to the final Q challenge. Which is quite difficult, if I recall. Let's see. Mini multi-ball modes also. Holodeck video modes and opportunities to advance in rank. The advancing in rank one, I don't understand, so I'll have to figure out what advancing in rank really does. I remember doing it, but I don't. It was one of the many random things that I was able to sometimes accomplish while playing this table. I was fairly young when playing this table too, so I wasn't really the best of pinball players at the time. If anything, I became a much better player after playing a lot of Star Trek The Next Generation. One unique feature is a patented below the playfield multi-ball ball delivery system, which results in continuous gameplay when balls on the playfield fall into a cellar hole. With its amazing feature set, custom speech by 8 original cast members, and the show's theme song and music, this table appeals to all players, but is a Star Trek fan's dream come true. And what's funny is the other table that would compete for top 1 or 2 as far as pinball tables is Twilight Zone, and Twilight Zone is probably a good 8 to 10 years older than Star Trek The Next Generation would have been, if not 20 years older. I'd have to really look at the date that Twilight Zone first aired. And yet, they both were fairly popular sci-fi series. Of course, if you're not interested in sci-fi at all, then you probably are going to be left out as far as pinball. There are definitely other themes, but they are lesser emphasized. So you have a phaser trigger, auto launcher. I feel like at some point they must have changed that trigger to look more like a phaser later on, or maybe somebody put a mod on it because that doesn't really look like a phaser. This is another table that's labeled as a Super Pin series. They didn't even mention that. 10 times multiplier. Each of these are your 8 missions, although there's 7, and then the Final Frontier, or 7 including the Final Frontier, and then Command Decision. You have a launcher here, like Terminator 2, and this table should be compared to Terminator 2, and a launcher here, which doubles it. You have a flying ship like Terminator 2. You have on the table artwork of the Klingons and the Next Generation, the Ferengi, the Romulans, and the Borg, which you could accidentally overemphasize the Borg easily when you think back at about the Next Generation, when really there was quite a few aliens, although there also were quite a few aliens that didn't succeed. Yeah, if anything, this phaser that's drawn on the table looks much similar to that, and that would be a Romulan disruptor, not a phaser, which I think Romulan disruptors only killed and disintegrated people. They didn't stun them or have as many settings or safeties on them. And under the table, you have ball launchers that shoot the balls up these scoops. And unlike a previous table, the balls aren't being put into the alleyway lane here and then shot under the ramp. It is all being done through the mechanics under in the drain that you don't see. This shoots it up and far away, all the way up to here, and then I think maybe back down that way as far as where it goes. Here you have I believe this is the time Travelership, and this was one thing that, if I recall correctly, was weird about this table, is that they have this design for the ship that either was shown for a single episode as a time traveler, or this is just a totally made up ship and it just doesn't fit. Here you have the shuttle. You have some top lanes. You have 3 pinballs, mini pop-up bumpers. They all feel like mini pop-up bumpers now, so pretty much everybody has adopted that. A lot of Starfleet logos and arrows pointing you in different places. Here you have the neutral zone, which has 2 standing targets in the scoop, or a scoop. Over here you have this sinkhole shot that you would only be able to really hit by either bouncing it off or hitting the top right flipper. You have a ramp that I think goes back this way, and a ramp that I think goes back this way. You have this ramp that scoops back the ramps up here and goes to the in lane, so they're possibly the figure 8, sort of. I guess the question is, how do you get to the in lane on this one? You have to get the ball to pop up there. I'm not sure how you pull that off. There's 2 standing targets there, 3 standing targets here, 3 standing targets here. It's a fairly tight out lane at first glance, except for on this side, which has a kickback and a ball saver. No center peg. Still has the barcode stuff. You have shield lights. One thing you could say about this table, and we'll see it as we play, is the idea that there's going to be a lot going on around this LCD screen, matrix screen, which is to say something. And so the 8 original cast characters you're going to have are Geordi LaForge, Diana Troy, Riker, Data, Jean-Luc Picard, Worf, and Worf is his name, and Dr. Beverly Crusher. I can't remember Riker's first name. I think it's like John. And see, this is another spaceship that is not really easily recognizable. It's like they made up their own spaceship specifically because they wanted this part of the table to be covered up, which seems just kind of ridiculous, because you could have easily had a any spaceship toy here to cover things up, and you don't need this extra wing, I don't think, and you don't need this extra wing. But that might be a Ferengi ship or something. And so you have like these Romulan blue fighters, and then you have another, I think this is a Romulan fighter, but it might be a Klingon fighter. A lot going on here. One comparison certainly to take from this is having 8 voice actors' voices being used feels very different from Terminator 2, which felt very much like an ego boost to Arnold Schwarzenegger only. And The Last Action Hero seemed to have that same problem also. There aren't, I imagine, too many other, if any other, tables that are based on TV shows instead of movies. And because of that, this ensemble cast, man, I'm just stuttering more and more, is going to be fairly unique. Like, you might be able to make an argument that as far as realistic characters, this table might have the highest number of realistic characters that are actually fully fleshed out. So the Next Generation doesn't really have that. I mean, Twilight Zone doesn't have that, because really Rod Sterling is the only main character you'd recognize from Twilight Zone. So we're going to complete the shuttle simulation, light the kickback, collect an artifact, score a Borg multiplier jackpot, and earn an extra ball. It'll be interesting to see how easy this game is. And there they're naming each of the actors by their actors' names instead of characters' name. So you have several different things you can launch on, and it just starts with this. Ideally, what you want to do is start a mission, but we can light one and lock.
Enterprise, the Borg have entered Federation space. Intercept immediately. Admiral Biaggi out. Course laid in, sir. Engage.
So it's kind of important to point out that the Borg are not really the main bad guy in Next Generation, in case you're just not familiar or remembering the show that much. This ball feels a little heavy. It was actually Q, this godlike creature that shows up in the very first episode and establishes this idea that he is going to test all of humanity. Well, actually, Q shows up and he says he's going to eliminate all of humanity from the timeline completely. And Jean-Luc Picard convinces him to give them a test instead, a trial. And that is the general concept around the entire Next Generation series, is that Q is always watching and testing and trying to see if humanity is worth saving. But in the first season, as part of the way that Q torments the crew of the Enterprise, and particularly Jean-Luc Picard, he sends the Enterprise far, far towards the edge of their quadrant of the galaxy, and he has them run intentionally into the Borg, which is a very dangerous species intent on assimilating everybody and turning them into cyborgs that think under a collective mindset. Eventually, they retcon that idea, and they add a Borg Queen, which, yeah, they kind of retcon a lot of they retcon a lot of it. Eventually, it also gets shown that the Borg own mass amounts of 3 quadrants near or around the Alpha Quadrant where the Federation is established.
Program initiated.
Alright, so the shuttle simulation is particularly difficult.
10 million.
There's
Program terminated.
there's a trick to it, but I don't know the trick. I think it's the same always.
The kickback is ready.
Yeah, we've relit the kickback. What we'll want to see is if the shields are the equivalent of the ball saver.
You are an honorable player.
And notice how it has to send the balls out to drain because it's balancing out where the balls are.
Space. The final frontier.
There's
These are the voyages.
weirdness, certainly not in the Picard series per se, but in the series slightly before the Picard series, Star Trek Discovery, which is a very weird
Suggestions.
We can destroy the asteroids.
attempt to pretend to make a new sci-fi show and call it Star Trek is basically what it is.
Move.
And in no way, in my opinion, felt like Star Trek at all for the one season I was able to see for free. But in that series, there are species with cybernetics and
Holodeck program ready.
electronic changes, like cyborg type modifications.
Excellent shot.
So then the Borg can't be considered objectionable just because they are enhancing their bodies. They have to be objectionable around the idea of eliminating individual freedom. But that concept doesn't really make sense either when everybody working on the Enterprise is part of basically the military wing of the Federation, as much as they may pretend like they're an exploration corps. That there's a lot of military elements that come around, and when there is a war that breaks out, it is always Starfleet that is called into action. I want to point out here, I several times have hit the ball and it has a little weakly and it has been flung to the left, and instead of ending up in the left out lane, it has ended up in the left in lane, which that just feels great. There could definitely be some annoyance with the music playing over and over again, and I may get content ID'd for this music playing over and over again. Like, ideally what you want to do is start a mission every time.
Initiate simulation.
Alright, so I missed there. I was aiming for the top left with the
Simulation.
3 triangles. And you can if you shoot it into that sinkhole correctly, it'll launch it back into the element. Fairly high score by 1993 standards. It's right in line, but getting 100 million on the table that you're really just warming up on. One of the things that this fixes,
Destroy the asteroids in our path, sir.
Make it so.
one of the things that this table does really nicely is that when you start a mission,
Evasive maneuvers.
you are doing something very different. You're getting different missions, whereas so many previous tables
Nicely done.
have specifically been designed
Crystals have been
to make you have to play in a certain order or do the same thing over and over again. There's just a level of variety here.
Excellent.
That one barely made it up.
Congratulations.
And so now we're starting Wormhole as a mission.
Get rough. 5 million.
Which some of these shots are the same
Here
shots,
she goes.
and it's not like a lot is really changing. You are, for a lot of these missions, just going to be hitting the same ramps, but it's going to feel like you're doing something different at least. Having to do 8 missions in 3 balls is asking a lot, and it certainly is going to highlight some
Initiating
issues.
simulation.
Fantastic.
Simulation complete.
Good luck.
There are some characters definitely that
Bonjour, mon capitaine.
is Q,
Q, what are you doing here? Let's play a little game.
like
Q,
Beverly
we don't have
Crusher,
time for your game.
Diana Troy, Joy LaForge are all kind of secondary characters, so they may get
Trajectory, you would have been rewarded.
very little lines of dialogue. It is going to be fairly hard
You are an honorable
to
player.
squeeze in so many characters. I think it's also worth mentioning this table must have been made after the second season started, because they killed the first security officer lady.
Final frontier.
She didn't want to be on the
Welcome to
show.
Enterprise.
She did come back for a couple episodes. And I can't really blame her for not wanting to be on the show after the first season, because the first season
Picking up a
was
crazy freighter in the neutral
kind of a
zone.
nightmare. Just a hostile work environment, it really. And that creates this muddled question, certainly, about
9 million.
how much of Gene Roddenberry's influence was actually good in the Next Generation, since Gene Roddenberry died after the first season, and the first season is considered the worst by far. But yeah,
Sensors are picking up a
Jean-
distortion in the space-time continuum.
Patrick Stewart was a theatrical actor who felt like he was too good to be in this role, and he took the acting a lot more seriously than any of the other actors did, and so he nearly quit. So yeah, there was definitely a long getting to know you period, to the point where if I was going to, I was aiming totally the wrong way. I was supposed to hit the center lane shot there.
The coordinates for the Alpha Quadrant.
Like, I would think if I was going to make a new Star Trek series, I would have a lot of people working together, a lot of the actors working together, getting to know each other before we even shot day one. I'd have them go on a team building exercises or something. Like,
Readings indicate lock is lit.
try my very best to make them feel like they really knew each other and really cared about each other as co-workers before even putting any of that on the first episode. But that would only fix so much anyways, because you still would have probably a lower budget in the first season and a kind of like bad, relatively bad quality sets
Thank you, Mr. Data.
and constructions. Although nowadays you'd probably be shooting full green screen anyway, so sets may not be that much of a problem.
Launch a probe.
Notice here that there
Multipliers are held, sir.
there are several different angles and
Ready.
seven different things you're shooting for when you do get the launchers. So these launchers basically supplement the idea of flippers. There's effectively 5 flippers on this table. You're just shooting them differently. And certainly Black Rose as a pinball table probably highlights that too. because Black Rose had the cannon under the field. Alright, well, I messed up getting the skill shot, so it's asking quite a lot to try and do the flipper skill shot on this, because you're setting yourself up for a lot out of work. I need to either get the center lane.
Congratulations.
There we go. So the flipper skill shot ranks you up.
Lock is lit, sir.
I'm not sure what the ranking does though.
Federation space. Intercept immediately. Admiral Biaggi out.
Course laid in, sir. Engage.
This isn't a table that feels like there's a lot of ways
Ready.
to get the ball up to that top area. So score multiplier times 10 might be a little bit more difficult.
Had you propelled the ball on the proper trajectory, you would have been rewarded.
This table was in a tournament that I participated in, and I believe the table was actually the prize.
The probe has discovered nothing, sir.
So I don't know why you would give such a nice table away. I don't know if this wasn't really some kind of weird element anyways. Right, left.
Program terminated.
But yeah, I as a kid entered this tournament and tried to get a very high score, and definitely saw someone that was able to get all the missions done in almost every game and got a much higher score. I talked to the guy, and he apparently worked in the mall that the arcade was in, and so every lunch break he was going to the arcade and playing the pinball, so he had a lot of practice. Plus he was just older and gonna be better anyways. So yeah, it would have been really cool to have won a pinball table. It would have been fairly insane at such a young age to have won a pinball table. Like, it would have taken up a lot of room in my house, certainly. Yeah, I don't know why the arcade was giving it away, but they did. I imagine by the time that had happened, the table had probably not made all the money they thought they could make off of it, which is hard to believe. I wouldn't be surprised if it was some shenanigans where the arcade owner was actually giving the table to his friend. The person that won it said they were going to, that he had a friend that owned a bar, and they were going to put it in the bar. So it wasn't even going to a collector's house. We can search the galleries. We could do asteroid threat. So that was a command decision, I believe, where you get to pick the missions. I wouldn't be surprised if a lot of arcades pulled some kind of shenanigans to give away as prizes arcade cabinets and pinball machines because they were about to go bankrupt, and they knew everything was just going to get collected by some debtor that they wanted to screw. And I imagine the person who won the tournament did not ever probably file the right taxes to say you did win a several $1,000s worth pinball table, which that's really where this would have been. I wouldn't be surprised if you spent $5,000 to get a next generation table in 2021, as long as it's in good condition. And this would be a table that would screen for an LED conversion, which might be a little sacrilegious, but it also look very nice. At a certain point, I think the LED conversions are the only way to go, because you're just not going to have any real other options. These light bulbs that these tables originally used almost certainly are running out and are just in the old stock stage. Old stock meaning nobody is manufacturing new stuff. There's just maybe some old stock sitting around in some distribution center somewhere. There is something weird, I would say, about the way this and see, that was 5 out of 8 missions.
Space. Welcome to the Enterprise.
There is something, I think, to be said about the way this table is emulated in particular, because you're not really focusing on the LCD screen as much as is being shown on the LCD screen. And this table can be fairly distracting if you do try to look up at the LCD screen. The good news is you really don't have to look at it, and you shouldn't look at it as playing. The LCD effects are basically for somebody else watching you play pinball, which the idea of showing off while playing pinball is probably underemphasized, but it definitely was a thing.
Up a distortion in the space-time continuum.
We've all gone back in time.
I think it's also worth mentioning Babylon 5 is a sci-fi series whenever talking about Star Wars or Star Trek, as that is a very good series that is easily forgotten these days, and I would recommend everybody check out the Babylon 5 movie, the first movie at least, because that sets up the 5-year series of Babylon 5. Don't bother to watch, I think, any of the other content, like the spin-off TV series Crusades, not really worth watching. I should be choosing the shuttle one, since I know there's a standard goal around that. So when doing the asteroids, you have to shoot up the center lane. And then you can hit a bunch of other ramps. Yeah, honestly, I personally think Babylon 5 is much better than even Next Generation, but it is lesser known and just not owned. There is a very good argument that not once but twice Paramount Pictures has stolen ideas to make Star Trek shows, and there's definitely evidence to point that they stole Deep Space Nine from Babylon 5, the concept of Babylon 5, and then Star Trek Discovery almost certainly stole a concept from a video game developer, and yet Paramount just has enough lawyers to get away with that. And then, even if you ignore how they mistreat other creators, you have to focus around Paramount and its Paramount Plus streaming service, and how it's locking all new Star Trek pretty much behind paywalls, trying to get you to get the fans that they think they can sucker into paying a significantly large monthly fee for 1, maybe 2 good shows.
The kickback is ready.
What is our exact
nice that
location?
you can light up the holodeck program by hitting that ramp, even while you're in a mission. Because other tables, I have in the past, made it so that if you're doing one thing, you can't do the next thing. Or you can't do the same thing.
Good luck. Launch of Class 1 probe.
The probe has discovered a lit extra ball. Program initiated.
Alright.
I'm sensing a lit extra ball.
Right. Center. Right.
10 million.
Center left.
10 million.
Program terminated.
The thing I think that sucks most about the simulation, this shuttle simulation, is the fact that you can't ever get lucky enough to go have a center cave. Or arguably, it would have been nicer if there was a center cave that just put you in circles, and then you could loop around
Space.
if you are too
Fine.
slow.
Welcome to the Enterprise.
Alright, let's get the multi-ball and try that some more.
Enterprise, the Borg have entered Federation space. Intercept
41 minutes into this table,
Course laid in,
you may
sir.
notice I am not
Cruising at warp factor 2.
pulling off a lot of the standard goals. This is a very complicated table, and that's part of the reason why, since this has such a long wind-up time as far as to the point where you would have just done everything on this table, this is almost certainly a very good choice. If you can only own one pinball table, Star Trek The Next Generation is a great choice.
Sir, a
You may
strange
get,
object is
you're
dead
gonna
ahead.
get tired of it a lot less than, see, that's like, they're saying this is the Borg ship, and I don't recall ever seeing a Borg ship that looked like that. I think they did have in the first generation, in the first season, a Borg ship that looked like this, but that quickly got replaced with the Borg cubes
Simulation.
and the Borg spheres. So maybe what you would say is that the ship that they ran into in the first generation was either a really small ship or a lesser used design, or it was a different species ship that had been assimilated.
Simulation complete.
So obviously if you were going to remake this table, you wouldn't really want to change too much, but you would easily remove that Borg ship and put a Borg sphere or Borg cube instead.
The probe has discovered nothing, sir.
Oh, I wasn't even looking at what I was supposed to be hitting.
Evacuate all personnel.
All of these missions eventually run out of time, and so
Dilithium crystals have
all
been
you really
collected.
need to do is keep playing and not have the ball drain out, and you will finish the missions. Where I will admit that it did not feel like that was the case when I was playing this as a kid. It felt like you actually had to do more to actually succeed.
Board the shuttle as
And
quickly as possible.
I think the truth of the matter is that the space shuttle,
Captain, our ship is disabled. We need uranium spheres.
5 million.
yeah, we've got a Ferengi multi-ball.
Most gracious, Captain. We need them now.
Cruising at warp factor 2.
Now, Warp Factor, in the second season, I feel like they kind of only went up to Warp Factor 5 or 6. I don't think they went all the way to Warp Factor 9. And then they kind of eventually realized that going at the highest warp factors was a problem, so they made an episode
You are an honorable
where they
player.
revealed that going at the warp in space was damaging space-time itself, and then they put speed limits on how fast they could warp. And then pretty much an episode or two later, they pretty much forgot about that and never mentioned it again.
Space, the final frontier.
This
These are the
is
voyages of
definitely going to be a
Starship Enterprise.
table
It's
that I'm
continuing
going to have a
mission
hard time
to
putting
explore
away.
strange new worlds, to seek out new
Right.
life and new civilizations, to boldly go where no
So
one
this
has
is going
gone
to tell
before.
you how to do it. But it's not going to tell you what to do. The goal is to complete 10 caverns. We also want the Borg multi-ball jackpot and an extra ball, which I feel like we got close to that. Let's see if we can see some helps there. The simulation is the same time, and it's very easy to remember the pattern for the biggest payoff. It is left, left, right, right, left, left, right, left, left, left. That awards 10 million, 10 million, 0 million, 30 million, 30 million, 30 million, 10 million, or extra ball. Left, left, right, right, left, left, right, left, left, left. Okay. Let's see if we can pull that off.
Welcome to the Enterprise.
See, and I knew that it was the same each time, because it would be a little bit crazy for it not to be the same each time for pinball. But for a regular video game, you would pretty much bet that that would be a major gameplay mechanic, and it would randomize every time.
Course laid in, sir. Engage.
This is a table that is not heavy on randomness at all.
Bonjour, mon capitaine. Q, what are you doing here?
Let's play a little game.
You
Q,
can't
we don't
really
have
do
time for your game.
anything super magical with pinball, so having a magical god-like creature like you does pose a interesting question as far as how do you represent Q interfering with the Enterprise in pinball format. You would think maybe they'd go with like a magnet on the table, as much as I have been unhappy with magnets being on other tables. Some of these missions feel like they could use a little bit of adjustments so that they actually could be finished a little bit quicker and easier, so you won't just drain out the ball in the effort to do one mission.
Sir, a strange object is dead ahead. On screen. Magnetized. Sensors are picking up a Ferengi freighter in the neutral zone.
Captain, our ship is disabled. We need uranium spheres.
So the pinballs are
We
being
need them now.
called duranium spears, not to be confused with dilithium spears. I think that probably is an extra voice actor that they gave the wrong line of dialogue to, or maybe that's supposed to be the joke, is that they say the wrong word.
Program initiated.
Alright. Left. We'll just finish it. Left. Right. Right.
10 million.
Left.
10 million. 10 million.
Left. Right.
Program terminated.
Oh man, you still have to dodge the spikes. So it really isn't left, left, right, right, left, left, right, left, left, left. It's a lot more stuff that you have to potentially hit.
Beyond belief. Commence firing.
Nicely done.
So what you're trying to do is sink the
Fire
balls
phases.
at these probes.
Send to Starfleet. We have engaged the Borg.
And so there's a quick board start.
All hands prepare for multi-ball.
And so now would be the time for a board multi-ball jackpot.
Damage to the shield, sir.
You will be assimilated. Resistance is futile.
Now that top right shot, that top right flipper, I don't think is going to let me hit the ball where I want to hit it.
Lieutenant.
Damage report.
Damage coming in from all decks.
So
Freedom is irrelevant.
with balls bouncing around, it is definitely difficult to get that center lane shot.
Holodeck program ready.
20 billion.
I don't think we've gotten
Commence firing. Brilliant.
Simulation complete.
now we're fighting the Romulans. There's definitely something to be said about how they've converted what is more of a political intrigue show than you would first think. And more has a lot more talking and politics in it than you would think.
Shoot again.
Let's see, holodeck, launch probe, flipper shot, start mission, might as well. You can't lock another multi-ball.
Evacuate all personnel.
And they've pretty much ignored all of that in the pinball for just the action. Which, in all fairness, I think a lot of Star Trek fans probably ignored all that for the action, and even the creators of Star Trek pretty much ignore that for all the action sequences.
Good luck.
I don't know what the holodeck really will do.
Hold on tight. This could get rough.
Honestly, I think I'm going to be fairly lucky if I even manage to.
Here is another chance.
There is Diana Troy. She did get one line of dialogue.
Vanadium crystals have been collected.
And you have
The kickback is ready.
Rod Sterling's wife voicing some of the lines of the computer, or all the lines of the computer. And they had her phonetically like sound out every word sound combination. Phenome is what they're called, I think.
Sensors are picking up a
So
distortion in the space
theoretically they could have used her voice as the computer in many future computer
The ball on the proper trajectory, you would have been rewarded.
interactions on Star Trek, and I don't think they really did.
You are an honorable player.
Notice how the ball is launching back up to move the ball around. See, it's 628.
Space.
It's
The
not
final
a
frontier. These are
really
the
high
voyages of
score.
Starship Enterprise. Its continuing mission. Welcome to the Enterprise.
So do we want to try for missions?
Suggestions.
We could destroy the asteroids.
You
in our
really
path.
should always
so.
shoot for missions. This is a table where I think if I personally owned it, I might lower the pitch a little bit. That there
Had you
are
propelled the
a few
ball on the
times where the
proper
ball
trajectory,
feels
you would have been rewarded.
a little weak. this isn't as bad as a lot of the other Williams Flippers tables when I've noticed them being very weak, but there is kind of an angle to the table. I could see some adjustments as far as there are some pegs between some of these jumps where some of these sinkhole scoops and ramps, whereas you could potentially try to open that more up so that it actually hits something and doesn't just bounce back on the rare occasions when that does happen.
Sensors are picking up a
Start another mission. You always want to be in missions, but different missions have you go in different directions, so
steady as she goes.
you want to be careful too about where you're targeting. Because notice I'm hitting a lot of things here, and they're not really playing towards what the goal is.
What is our exact location?
But whatever, I mean, that just means your score is going to be lower.
Readings indicate lock is lit, sir.
Okay. Search the galaxy.
Set coordinates for the Alpha Quadrant.
I'm probably going to start running out of things to say because I just really want to play the table. That's all I want, is just to play the table.
Holodeck program ready.
You might have... I could see having on the back art of the table having either more of a depiction of space with stars or a depiction of all of the characters and having them light up on the back art, but they're already on the backboard, so that's not crazy.
Sensors are picking up a Ferengi freighter in the neutral zone.
What you would have wanted to do
Captain, our ship is disabled. We need uranium spheres.
is you would have wanted to have made a sequel to this table, and apparently they never did that, because you would have had, let's see, if this is mostly the second season or third season when this table would have been made, you could have tried to include elements from the fourth or fifth season, but I don't feel like there was really anything new added as far as enemies or anything in the fifth season. You would have like lore show up.
Congratulations.
Don't know of anything else though. Like lore is kind of it.
Readings indicate lock is lit, sir.
There's a lot of things that, a lot of episodes that were around Data and a lot of episodes that were around Riker, but you can't have entire missions around one episode that focused on one character.
Let's play a little game.
Star Trek The Next Generation in particular was really good about being willing to genre bend, and so there were definitely some episodes that were horror-ish. There were a lot of sci-fi episodes also a lot of political episodes.
That was too easy.
10 million.
So yeah, they didn't really introduce any new characters. Wesley Crusher, thank goodness he's not on the table.
The board have entered Federation space. Intercept immediately. Admiral Yeti.
Alright, if I can get one mission to start now and one other mission to start after that, then I'll be able to start the final mission.
Congratulations.
These shots, by the way, are so precise with the launchers that once you get them down, you're pretty much set for life.
Simulation complete.
I guess your rank acts as a secondary multiplier.
Shoot again.
I feel like I've earned extra balls. So I don't know why I haven't unlocked the earn an extra ball standard goal. Maybe I already have done that and just didn't notice it when it popped up. So now the final frontier is lit up.
You are an honorable player.
I was right about to start the final frontier. And see, for this table, I don't even really want to try and cheat. Because we've just seen over and over again that
Space.
coming in here
Final frontier. These are
and
the voyages of the Starship.
trying to cheat doesn't seem to really do anything. But we'll just for consistency's sake do it. Let's see. What I'm suspecting is that there might be quite a bit that you could change here. And so if you were to own this table, you could turn it down to a little bit easier. As someone who's slightly older nowadays, like playing a table like this on easy makes a lot of sense because I probably wouldn't want to spend more than a couple hours a week playing a table like this. I couldn't play it like every day for 3 or 4 hours, which at medium or hard, that's pretty much what you would have to do. So kickback setting hard by default. Multi-ball percentage chance at 20. Command reruns. Ferengi time at 10 seconds. You could increase that skill lock count too. You can't buy extra balls. In free play, buying extra balls would make it very easy. Certainly. The track sands are off. Video can be turned off completely, apparently. Video attract is off. That's weird. The flipper plunger is off, which maybe that should be on, frankly. Being able to pull a flipper and activate the plunger makes a lot of sense, unless you were... No, I think for this game that works fine, because I don't think there's ever a case where you need to pull the trigger while another ball is on the table. Here they have the left launcher broken, the right launcher broken. They knew they were going to break at some point, so you can just disable them completely, and they've programmed a way to work around that. Poker night, that's a weird option. Wonder what that is. Oh, poker night in IGHT would be like what happens at the very end of Star Trek, The Next Generation. Is that for the first time Jean-Luc Picard decides to show up at poker night and play with the rest of the crew instead of isolating him. Patrick Stewart, the actor, isolated himself away from the other actors, but also the captain kind of isolated himself from the rest of the crew too, which arguably that is the right thing to do. Alright.
Simulation complete.
Alright, so I just tried to use ball control there, and the ball did not lose enough momentum for that to even work.
Bonjour, mon capitaine.
Q, what are you doing here?
Let's play a little game.
Q, we don't have time for your game.
So, if you're going to use ball control, the best I think you can do, you can see how this angle is rough, is mostly keep the ball in play, because you can't really pull anything else off.
Lieutenant.
There's just not enough momentum.
sensors are picking up a Cardassian ship in the neutral zone.
Let's see. So the only thing this cheating is really going to get you to, oh man, like look at that, ball control sucks. It's just not worth even trying it. You might as well never have introduced the pro mode if it was going to be this bad. What are some other tips here? Pro Bio. It's provided by Josh Sharp and Zach Sharp. Interesting. Competitive pinball tables. Interesting. The other IFPA pro tips, like these are slightly helpful. Table exploration's great, but yeah, this is so glitched. Operator mode really doesn't do anything. Having a tilt meter is pretty useless. Help in general is fairly useless, and then having under help a manual that just takes you to a website is fairly useless.
Welcome to the Enterprise.
We'll try the board jackpot, and then we're going to have to call it a day. Which is really the way to play this too, because the last thing I want to do is burn myself out on this. I would say the difference between this table and just a few years earlier Funhouse as a table is how often you would really need to come back and play Funhouse compared to this table. Like, if I owned Funhouse, I would love to own Funhouse, but I would really only play it once a month. Its gimmicks and its modes are fairly limited in comparison. That being said, for what pretty much would be, in my mind, a previous generation table, Funhouse is the perfect table for that generation. It's just that Star Trek The Next Generation basically established the next generation of pinball tables, and the idea of having multiple pinball modes and missions, and having each mission really feel like a episode of a TV show. Well, that multi-ball drained out, but
Congratulations, Lieutenant.
it didn't screw me over as much as I thought it would.
Initiate simulation.
This mode in the battle simulation
Fire when ready.
is probably one of your best modes to start, because it is more linear and it keeps the ball off the playfield for a lot of the time if you do it right. So you're very safe as far as a random drain out.
Fire all weapons.
Congratulations.
Phases at ready.
Excellent shot, Lieutenant.
If you get the shot perfectly, and I don't know why I have two balls on the table. I think the game glitched there.
Strange object is dead ahead. On screen. Magnify.
And I don't think there was supposed to be two balls at that time. These launchers, by the way, will drop the ball if you don't pull the trigger. So you can't just keep them in the launchers forever. They will turn enough to drop them and just feed them to the in lane. Honestly, if you were remaking this for 2021, you almost certainly would have launchers.
Extra ball.
Extra ball.
Here's the extra ball. You might have used the launchers as a way of feeding into the in lanes or feeding to the right and left lower flippers, but that would be fairly dangerous too to try and pull that off,
She goes.
because they would move fairly quickly and probably cause it
Had
to
you
drain.
propelled the ball on the proper trajectory, you would have been rewarded.
So we got the extra ball.
Shoot again.
Let's light the lock and see if we can get the jackpot. Although we are also very close to.
If you do not surrender, we will destroy your ship.
We will never
See,
surrender.
even the lines of dialogue that they're saying are not in line with what you would expect the Borg to say.
Jackpot.
There's the jackpot.
Firing.
So this may very well have been a case that this table was made at the same time as the episode was supposed to air,
All hands prepare for multi-ball.
and that might be why the Borg are acting very weird, saying slightly off lines.
Damage coming in from all.
Jackpot.
It would also certainly explain the idea of deuterium spheres instead of dilithium spheres.
Damage to the shield, sir.
Deuterium, I believe, is a real radioactive compound used to make like nuclear bombs.
Super jackpot.
So that's probably why they changed it to dilithium in the first place, which is a fictional element that I'm sure they'll name something dilithium
In the space-time
as they discover new elements.
Program initiated.
Try the space shuttle again. Left. Left. Right. Right.
10 million.
Left.
10 million.
Left. Right.
10 million.
Program terminated.
Oops. It's that one spike. You're gonna have to be real careful around getting good at missing that one spike.
Come on.
It'd be funny if you get a rank higher than Captain Picard and you're like an ambassador.
Sensors are
If anything, you would kind of expect the Federation to have a lot of different classes of ranks, because there would just be more people and there would have to be more of a desire and more of a way to keep people in different ranks. So you would think that they would have introduced something above like ambassador or president or emperor, things like that. So do we want to do a holodeck? Or do we want to do a mission? Let's do a mission.
Evacuate all personnel.
But the beauty about all these missions really does boil down to just keep the ball in play. And while that is true for most pinball, we've seen way too many tables where you had to hit one thing for you to be able to accomplish anything, and you would just be locked in that mode. Taxi is probably the worst example of that, and Taxi's a pretty good game, but
Have been collected.
yeah, when you have to hit Lola to move the story forward or score any decent amount of points, that's fairly crazy. And maybe Diner is even worse than
Sensors are
Taxi.
picking up a Romulan warbird in the neutral. Good luck.
We should play at least one game where we launch the holodeck.
Set coordinates for the Alpha Quadrant.
If I can just keep this ball in play,
Beta Quadrant.
then
Nicely done.
Nicely done.
Set coordinates for the Delta Quadrant.
yeah.
You are an honorable player.
I'm getting really, really close to the Final Frontier mission. Which, in all fairness, when I played this as a kid, I never got this
The
close.
crew performed admirably in dispatching the Borg threat.
I would love to have this table, but I don't know if I would be a good owner of this table. Or any pinball table, really. It's really hard to maintain tables. And maybe they should just be in museums. There's no telling if there was 5,000 or 20,000 of these tables made. Since they didn't tell us that. Oops. I should have locked the ball. Because I was trying to light the holodeck. Which means I have to start the multi-ball first.
Congratulations, Lieutenant.
I would much prefer a I would like a replica of this table, really, is what I would like. Something that I don't have to worry about it becoming a museum piece. I would like some slight modifications. I would like the ability for the table to swing upward like a Murphy bed, so it doesn't take up so much space. I don't just want a digital replica like an At Games pinball table. I would like the actual physical pinballs and physical elements to exist. What would make a lot of sense is if they were to make just a new Star Trek The Next Generation table. 25th anniversary, 30th anniversary, 50th anniversary. Like, I don't even know how many years we're really approaching. But it would be easy to make some slight changes and make a new anniversary. But you can kind of tell that Paramount doesn't really care, because if they did care, they would be doing a lot more with Star Trek The Next Generation besides the somewhat bare minimal. They did allow a lot of the graphics to be redone and updating it to like 2K, 4K Blu-rays, although I don't know, and redoing a lot of the CGI for the original series and the Next Generation series. But really, I think that was mostly because they realized they weren't going to be able to air the show on TV syndicated if the graphics didn't get updated. But
we could destroy the asteroids in our path, sir.
Make it so.
the new Paramount, the people in charge, which the people in charge have changed quite a bit, as is true for a lot of long-running businesses, are really only interested in their new ideas and what they can use how they can use the classics to promote their new ideas. And it is definitely, I think, fair to accuse people making Star Trek now of not really being particularly good stewards or fans of previous Star Trek series. But I honestly don't know what you could do with Star Trek to fix it, because every time they try to do something new with Star Trek, it just fails miserably. People are locked into their nostalgia, and I think that's just the problem, is that this is a 100% nostalgia product now. Same very well is true for like Mickey Mouse. You can't really make a new Mickey Mouse cartoon series or movie or anything that would appeal to old fans of Mickey Mouse. And so
Welcome to the Enterprise.
it's, I imagine, just something you have to enjoy what it was created and move on. I'm sure there are some fanfic novels out there around Star Trek that are pretty good too, much like the Star Wars Extended Universe fanfic novels.
Captain, our ship is disabled. We need uranium spheres. We need them now.
they don't really get down to who the Ferengi really are in this table, but it's kind of hard to expand on the fact that they're scammers and basically capitalists taken to an extreme.
Sir, a strange object is
So
dead
they're
ahead on
asking
screen.
you for the deutranium spheres, and it's not really getting down to the fact that they didn't need them. And like the first time the Enterprise runs into the Ferengi, they didn't know them as a species, so it was basically one unaffiliated captain that was trying to scam the Enterprise, and it wasn't until much later they established that no, that's just their entire species culture.
Program initiated.
Left.
Program terminated.
Well, that sucks. So if you want to really practice the space shuttle mode, you need to
Congratulations, Lieutenant.
you need to start and launch the balls to get multi-ball,
Simulation.
and then from multi-ball light the holodeck,
Nicely done. Fire when
or you just want to hit the
ready. Phases at ready.
notice how it took it a little bit longer.
Commence firing.
This one's fairly easy to hit as I miss it. Notice that the top left flipper also is angled in such a way that it hasn't gotten in the way a lot. It would be fairly hard for the ball to get under that flipper because it is angled at a very different angle. It doesn't go full horizontal.
Shoot again.
Oops, that's not what I meant to do.
Bonjour, mon capitaine.
Q, what are you doing here?
Let's play a little game. Q, we don't have time for your game.
Yeah, and I'm just gonna keep on playing this table if I'm not careful. One of the things I said is as soon as I started playing this table, this and Twilight Zone, I may very well lose a lot of motivation to play other tables. So I need to be very careful here as far as maintaining momentum and making more episodes.
That's the best you can do.
That will send to Starfleet. We have engaged the Borg.
Battle station.
Fire phases.
I'd say some of the audio
All hands prepare for multi-ball.
on a table like this could probably be a little bit better. Like, and yeah, if you were going to make a new version of this, you would have
Kickback is ready.
all of the actors in live action in an OLED screen instead of an LCD screen. You'd redo all the graphics. Shields are at full power.
Damage coming in from all decks.
I don't know what that means.
A replay, sir.
Damage to the shield, sir. Jackpot.
And we're still in Q's challenge, even though we were in a multi-ball mode too.
Not bad at all.
And those out lanes are just designed perfectly. The ball almost never hits that right out lane.
Holodeck program ready.
I guess the space shuttle simulation is supposed to be a simulation so that you can crash the ball without, well, you can crash the shuttle without it being an issue. I think holodeck was already lit at that time.
Program initiated.
Avoid mines and walls. I don't think you can actually
Program terminated.
even the spikes are in the same place.
Congratulations, Lieutenant Commander.
Maybe the left, left, right, right, left, left, right instructions include the spikes. Trying to lock the ball for another multi-ball. And you can just play this forever. I think after 2 or 3 hours I might get tired of this audio. The audio changes enough and it breaks into other lines of dialogue enough that it's kind of hard to hear what is repeated music as being repeated music. Like the music will get somewhat repetitive if you manage to not actually hit any shots. And since a mission is not started at the moment, me playing like this is the worst way to play this table. Because I'm barely accomplishing anything. That left out lane does drain a little bit often, but not enough for me to really complain. Plus you got the kickback. Well, I think, as much as I would like to just play another game, I think part of the long-lasting thing here
Starship Enterprise. Its continuing mission to explore
would be that
Welcome to the Enterprise.
I am gonna not really be able to succeed at everything that needs to be done for the wizard goals for quite a while. I may never get all the wizard goals even for this table, and this is the table I am most likely to play a lot of.
Engage.
And if we check, I still have 192 achievements to unlock, and so there would be a massive amount of other tables I would have to play in comparison to this way worse tables.
Dead ahead. On screen. Magnify.
And so it's going to be fairly difficult to justify going back and playing something like Pistol Poker when you have this as an option instead. But then if you're going to be a real-world collector of pinball tables, you still, I think, would want to own 3 or 4 pinball tables if you could.
Good luck.
I would be happy, but not super happy just owning this table. And certainly there is a case that
10 million.
left
10 million.
Program terminated.
I shouldn't get the millions, that's what I shouldn't do. Yeah, well, that's generally what you would want to do to get the simulation done. It's just a lot of grinding for that.
The final.
Let's wrap this up by doing what is right. I am fairly happy that that this table holds up, because there was that risk that this table was going to actually be a lot worse than I remembered. I'm also fairly happy that there's a table in between this and Twilight Zone. If this came out in 1993, though, let's say, yeah, 2003 would be a 10-year anniversary, and that means a 20-year anniversary in 2023 would be very due. Williams, I don't think, is in business anymore, so but it would be fairly easy for Paramount to relicense Star Trek again. And we do have Star Trek as an option here. And we'll play the trial version at some point. Yeah, I just don't feel like I want to spend the $10 at the moment. Let's see, play the trial version and see if we can at least look at the attractive scene. So yeah, 2013 Star Trek Vengeance Premium. A premium idea around tables is weird. So this is the movie reboot series of Star Trek, the original series. Vengeance, I don't think was even the name of one of the movies, so they're taking the movie reboot concept and those actors and doing it, and doing a different idea. And this table looks incredibly simplistic compared to the next generation. It looks like it basically has nothing going on for it at all. Big, wide open play field. Seems to be multicolored LEDs, which that is new technology, I suppose. 6 missions from the looks of it. 1 toy of the Enterprise, which would be the original series Enterprise. 1 drop-down target, several standing targets on the edges of the ramps. That is an improvement in technology. A row of 3 drop-down targets on the right, 2 drop-down targets, or 2 standing targets on the left. This is a Stern table now, so it would be up to Stern if they were going to make a new next generation table, I suppose, and that I bet Paramount would let them. There is a toy from the looks of it. Pro mode is not even shown on the table until you buy Pro mode. So the only way you can look at the table is this. There is like a Star Trek ship in the background there. So what is the question?
Welcome aboard.
Space jump.
Bob, pull the trigger.
The movie, I'm just gonna play one game here to see what a trial mode really is. That way I know whether or not I need to spend $10 and buy these tables. But the original series reboot movies definitely,
Damn it, Jim, you have to avoid those.
Only had enough time to really be action movies, and they really didn't have time to reestablish the characters and the actors as those characters.
If you can hear us, Mr. Scott, open the door in 10.
There's a lot of noise going on. Notice that they're saying, I think, Mark instead of Warp.
A bronze medal.
There's something on the heads-up display as far as a button to press or something.
Save the Enterprise.
Gravity systems are failing. Hold on.
Warp cube.
Well, that was Warp.
Galactic away team is lit.
I don't think there's particularly anything wrong with this table. If anything, I think the angles are pretty good. I think the audio is fairly annoying. don't understand the different colored light that's blinking. Whether that's supposed to represent red alert or whether it's supposed to represent a black hole or wormhole or what.
Save the Enterprise.
Yeah, it looks like there's a button, but
Locks are lit.
the button doesn't seem to trigger with the left or right bump. If anything, this feels like a table designed for the 70s with modern technology, or for somebody who has just like never played pinball before. And maybe even in 2013, that is the right thing to do. But I also feel like there's definitely some issues. Interesting.
Only one target left. Or 3.
You have a fairly sharp center lane shot there. And that's it. So that's as much as you can play without paying for it. Is just it abruptly cuts you off as a demo. Now, arguably, does that stop you from jumping back in and playing again? No. But it does stop you from actually having any success or getting any of the standard goals or anything like that done. And if I was to buy this, I think it's probably not all 4 of these are in the same pack, so I may end up spending like $20 to get 4 tables just out of completionist need. We don't really have that many more tables to go through also. Let's do one more thing and check the leaderboards. So overall, I want to know what my score is. 36,015th overall score with 1,218,899,000, a legitimate score. Not too bad. Playing on a Friday, I'm in the top 200, but not 100, which that seems very fair too. And then monthly, I'm at 154. What this really goes to highlight more than anything is the idea of how many people are playing this table because it is so good. And while some of these scores at 500 billion and 400 billion may seem a little high, I wouldn't be surprised if that is exactly accurate, because I bet you get 100 million for beating the Final Frontier. That would be my guess. But yeah, once you start getting into the top 200, you're talking 50 million, 60 million scores, which seems very much reasonable. That definitely also goes to show I'm not the best Star Trek The Next Generation player out there. So yeah, next time we're going to be playing Teed Off, which may be a golfing themed, and it may be pretty good too. And then Twilight Zone, hopefully, is as good as I remember it also. Logically, if I was going to win the lottery, I'd buy a decent shape, a decent table that was still in good shape for Star Trek The Next Generation, Twilight Zone, and then Funhouse. And that would be my top 3 picks, unless I run into some table that I really haven't remembered or haven't ever played. After that, if I was just a millionaire, I'd go with like Theater of the Magic and Junkyard, I think is a pretty good table too. And it may be a little bit ridiculous, but then I would get like the Getaway, High Speed 2 and High Speed 1, and then maybe I'd get Class of 1812. You could probably get that table fairly cheap. There's definitely some tables that we haven't seen, like Apollo 13. We're still trying to find that table. Pinbot, historically good enough to make sense. Elvira, good enough to make sense. To own that too. I'd get Gorgar if I could get it. And then I would try to get a 60 Eras table. So you're talking like 10 tables, potentially, that if I just won the lottery and had infinite amount of space, I'd like to be able to play that. Basically, what you need to be able to have is some way that the floor itself that a pinball table was sitting on would raise up and go down. And so you would have like a elevator of pinball tables, 3 or 4 pinball tables in that were on a sturdy forklift type device that would lower them down and raise them up so they take up less space. Although that's really crazy and they're really heavy, so that would never really happen. Theoretically, the real solution here is a holodeck type technology. If you could make something feel absolutely like it's real, but create it out of photons, and a holodeck fictional technology like that, that would be the real wise thing to do. And the closest thing you could get to that is 3D printing. So that there is an argument through a lot of research and a lot of work where you could make a basic table that didn't have any theme on it and sell components for that basic table and 3D print components for that basic table, and then have kind of like a monthly or quarterly loot box type subscription where the table gets new elements and it gets new software themes and it gets new art, and it's some kind of open source hardware initiative, which the idea of open source hardware is fairly new even in 2021. But yeah, that would probably be the real way to go for a collector mentality, in the same way that NES consoles and video game consoles really wouldn't work if they only played one game. That was what happened with the first generation of video games consoles, is that they played one game, maybe several pre-built-in games, but it wasn't until you had some kind of cartridge that you could take out one game and put in a new one that they started to really make sense for the amount of space and money they cost. It's a lot harder to do that with pinball. It's not impossible to do that, but it's a lot harder. I could see possibly having a table that had pins, just a whole bunch of needles that it could magnetically, electronically move up and down, creating a surface. That there might be an idea to that. But yeah, I think 3D printing really would be a better bet. It's just to have every component 3D printed. Of course, a lot of it doesn't have to be 3D printed either. Like making a metal ramp or a plastic tube, those could be done with just regular procedures. Anyways, that's going to be it for this recording. As always, I ask you to like, share, subscribe, comment, and watch every second of my videos. If you want a friend to follow me on any social media sites, there's a whole bunch of links down below. And if you want to support me further, there's a link to Patreon, or you can friend me on Steam and gift me a game off my wishlist. Thank you for watching. Have a good evening.